And I can welcome everybody. Hi and hello for the SUSE QE Tools workshop today on the 14th of November. Hi, Pavel, producing some audio feedback here. I'll mute you. Sorry, I hope you don't
Oh,
mind. And today the topic is to talk about the Saga that we completed already some months ago, which is openQA for SUSE customers ticket 127031. So I created that Saga over 2 years ago. Let me check. It's actually in March 2023, so 2.5 years ago. And the original motivation is that, well, SUSE customers built their own products based on SUSE products, which is including SLE as base for, deriving images. And we know that customers or partners also use OBS and openQA. So the idea was to provide a combined offering, also including actually the test distribution or SADO as this part of offering running at the side of the customer with support by SUSE. So the goal for us was that we must ensure openQA is usable for customers and by customers. The acceptance criteria, which we already stated at this time, was that openQA, composed of the web UI and the workers, is ready to be used also with updates. That means that we need to continuously build, test, and publish that one on the latest SLE Plus package hub, at least if not pure SLE, so not necessarily relying on package hub. And a second criterion which was explicitly mentioned is that Python-based openQA are usable for testing new products. At this time, we already had since longer support for running test modules based on Python code, but it wasn't that commonly known yet, or maybe not streamlined, had some rough edges. So we took the opportunity of the Saga to work on both of those areas, and actually in the 124 subtasks that we worked on here, we also had the opportunity to make openQA more easy to deploy and install in general. So what we did is, for example, come up with the single instance container-based setup. So if you go to the official openQA documentation and go to the openQA installation guide, the very first thing that you see, and this is also showing here in this video animation, how to run a test with a single instance container in 5 minutes. And we know that more and more people use that now also for development purposes. You guys, some of you use it for running tests, and we offer it as the first suggested step how to get into openQA. So, if you have Podman, then you can just copy paste this one command line, and then you will get a fully functional openQA single instance. It also does support cloning and checking out OSADO test distribution. And you can see that here in the video when it says skip SUSE tests and skip SUSE specific. So you can configure if it is used or if it's not used. I mean, if you want to start with any test distribution, then you don't need that. But I see here from the list of the attendees that all of you, most of you, if not all of you right now are SUSE employees, so you would most likely work with the OSADO test distribution anyway, and that can also work. The documentation also explains how to trigger and clone existing jobs within the single instance container, and provide some examples here. For example, here based on the example test distribution. And here the skip SUSE specifics and SUSE tests are mentioned in particular for the support for OpenSUSE or SUSE tests. But the single instance container is only one of the supported ways how to deploy openQA. So certainly it is possible as it was for years, to have separate web UI and worker containers. So we have separate containers for that. You can have custom configuration for containers. And of course, if you go to the next sections like chapter 9, quick bootstrapping under openSUSE, you can also, without any containers, still continue to use the bootstrap script to deploy containers and run openQA in a browser, as well as custom installation using repositories and procedures. Gaurav?
I recently tried the bootstrap script, but it wasn't working out of the box. So there was this SUSE CS certificates repo. It was
Yep.
having some expired GPG keys.
I see. On which operating system base was that?
It was tumbleweed.
Okay. So yeah, the CA certificate repository might be a problem on some. So um, if if you can reproduce that, I would be happy to. You can receive a ticket from you, and we can look into that because there are super options to say automatically import GPG keys, and maybe if people trust a random shell script which they download from the internet, then maybe they also want this in a confined environment to automatically accept that key.
Sure, I'll try to reproduce it again.
Awesome, thank you. Right, so much about the deployment. Let me see. So from this list of tickets, I don't want to go over all of those, but what we can do is take a look into the epics, which show the high-level plans that we had here, and group by tracker, because then I can distinguish between the individual action task and the epics, which are the high-level tasks. So we had 11 coordination tasks. What I just mentioned is related to, you can see here, the easier openQA setup. So we streamlined and extended how we can deploy, install, and run openQA, which is also what is benefiting every user of openQA and also you guys. So not necessarily only SUSE customers or anything like that. The second, which I wanted to mention, is OpenQA Bootstrap support in, well, it says Leap 15.3 at that time, but also as the follow-up is what we just mentioned, what we extended there. Next, let's look into the Python bindings for openQA. And I don't want to take a look into the ticket itself because what we can find is the documentation also on open.qa. So let's just look for Python and or how to write tests. Then we see that the first example is the example in Perl. How would you write a test module? It could look like this. So we are using a base test. We import the test API, and then we have a simple run method where you can write test API calls to write a test module. You can do the equivalent in Python. So there's also a test API module, which is available when auth-order-inst runs, because then it is providing the import path for the test API. And then you can also have a run function. It's actually also a method for this object. And then write similar instructions in here. The challenge can also often be if you have any kind of custom libraries or so, which are maybe in Perl, then you cannot directly import them in Python. But if you have helper libraries in Python, you can import those directly. And for Perl, what you can do is you can actually try to follow the same approach that auth-order-inst is doing. I just want to show you with a very short glimpse on how could that look like. Because if we take a look at the test API.py file, it is not even existent here in the source file because it is automatically generated. And the generated module, let me see if I can, where can I see that? Yeah, okay. Disregard my last. when you run OS Audience, then that module does exist. Basically, what it does, it's using a wrapper functionality, and by that you can access all Perl functions from the test API. So you can use the same approach also for other modules, so that you can wrap a Perl helper library and make that importable by Python code. And if you like neither Perl or Python, you can also use Lua. So also in Lua, you can write something which looks like Lua code, but again is then very similar. You have a test API, and then you have a function which is called run. And in this block, you write the test code. And again, all of those are more or less equivalent. They have full access to the test API. So with that, we have, there should be no more argument as in Perl is complicated or anything for writing test code. Of course, if you're working with something which is already existing and building on the top of the shoulders of multiple people that contributed to test distribution in before, main example would be Osado, because this is by far really a really big test distribution. Then of course Perl code can also become complicated, but then I would say it's not the fault of OS Audience or openQA itself. Now, next, what we also did is we used this opportunity to improve the code coverage in OS Audience. While this is not directly benefiting users or customers, because in the end it's just how OS Audience itself is developed and tested, that also provides a certain promise of stability. Of course, code coverage is not everything, but I'm sure that it already provided us significant benefit to achieve a goal of 100% statement coverage in OS Audience. Makes development easier and also safer. How does it look like? If we take a look into the OS Audience GitHub repository, you can see that there is a batch here, code curve 100%. So now we don't even need to take a look at all those fancy graphs anymore, because it's really simple. We can assume that every single code line, with some tiny marked exceptions, is really fully covered. So you have this 100% bar everywhere, means effectively you don't need the bar anymore, right? What this also means is that it eases development, because then when we do code review, we know that every single line of code is executed, and we can focus much more on what a pull request provides in functionality, not if the simple levels of is it even called are covered. How we ensure that to stay that way might also be interesting to see. So we have the code conf YAML file, and that one says here that for this project, we have a target of 100% with no threshold. So it really needs to be 100.0%. And that means every pull request also needs to fulfill this, and we will not deteriorate again. How does it look like in pull requests then? So if we take a look here, then we see we have checks, and we ensure with code coverage that patch and project are at 100%. Of course, as always, there can be exceptions. So I just picked the very first pull request, and that is a shell script. And this shell script is only used at the level of deployment, so not covered by any kind of unit test. So it wouldn't be relevant for the code cover rule, but I guess that's fine, because if you would have any, let's just pick something that changes per code here. So test API.pm, we have this one line, and then we can see that what CodeCov tells us that there are some tests failing, and the code check doesn't show up yet because the test would fail. But if it would pass, then also in the Mergify configuration, it would look for those checks to succeed, and without those succeeding, the pull request will not be merged. We have a similar epic for openQA. There, it's a bit more demanding, and we're not quite there yet, but we are all in a pretty good spot, I would say, because if you take a look at the code cup report, it actually says 99%, and I think it's even if this would load, yeah, never mind. It's 99%. What else? SUSE, or in particular OpenSUSE, now switched to enforcing SE Linux security profiles. And that means that we also needed to ensure that OpenQA works in an SE Linux enforced environment. Well, we have that. There were 2 or 3 minor bugs which were uncovered mostly by our openQA and openQA tests. So those also provide some good benefit in showing us if openQA works really based on an operating system level. And yeah, we could accommodate for that. Next, to be able to actually submit missing dependencies to a SLE base or package up, we also needed to ensure that we have an up-to-date Perl stack, because we had some packages which were maybe only in our devel openqa repository and not really submitted, and then some kind of upstream fixes missing and such. And also we, in our team, we are maintaining the devel languages Perl project on OBS, mostly Tina Müller is. And that also needs to be, needs to be covered in some Saga. So this is why we saw it as related to the Saga. As a consequence afterwards, then we could work on those 3 epics. So let's first start with openQA on SLE and PackageUp. And the end result is of this epic that we have all dependencies of openQA in a SLE base or PackageUp. What we needed to do for that is multiple tens of packages which were either not in SLE at all, or were there only with outdated packages, and we had updates mostly in our devel openqa repository as an overlay, and we managed to submit either the missing packages or the updates by maintenance updates to the according targets. In many cases, those were actually SLE maintenance updates, but also in some cases it was PackageUp submissions, meaning to the openSUSE backports project. The end effect of that is if we go to the devel openqa project, and then we have separate sub packages for operating system base, like for example leap 15.6, but actually that repository is the same that one would use on a SLE 15 SP6 or higher base. And we can see that previously we had something like 10 to 30 packages in here. And by now we only have a single package in here, Perl tidy, which is a bit special. And I know that you guys are also impacted by that because of this. There's a new version bringing in new rules, and then we need to adopt all the packages to that. So we don't know any better solution than to keep it in this overlay repository. But that means that all other dependencies are there, and Perl tidy is not really necessary to run or sort in openqa. So everyone can also run without any additional dependencies based on a leap 15, on a clean official leap 15.6, as well as SLE plus PackageUp. So this is for the dependencies. What we do for OAuth order instance openQA itself is, and for that, maybe I can quickly log in. What we have there is automatic submissions of updates, not only to Tumbleweed, but also to Leap 15.6 or the Backports project as maintenance updates. So let me show you first one example, which is openQA to factory. So those are automated submissions of new versions of openQA after they are being tested with openQA in openQA, and then submit to factory so that new packages end up in Tumbleweed. And you can see in the changes, this was created 2 days ago, so every couple of days, normally every third day, assuming there are changes, a new submission is created for openQA. And you can see here that the diff is really small because the last update was actually only bringing in one small commit. Yeah. So if you're running Tumbleweed, you don't need any additional repositories and you have a sufficiently up-to-date openQA available. What about Leap 15.6? Let me look into, let me see where I can find that. Requests. And we can see openQA to openSUSE maintenance. So we can see that also that one was created 2 days ago, but we have a throttle included. So this is a bit slower cadence, okay? So we are also submitting those updates to Leap maintenance, but less often because the maintenance process cannot be that quick. That means that we can expect a bigger delta in the changes that we have with every update. But normally still, what does that mean for you is that you could also run a recurringly updated Leap 15.6, and you don't need any additional repositories, and you can just rely on the official repository supplied from a Leap system. You can see that the latest commit, which is also going to factory, is included, but also to change that since October 24. So this is a delta worth of 2 weeks or 3 weeks worth of changes, but also not more. Now you might ask, what about Leap 16.0? Well, also for that one, we have maintenance updates, but there's a new process which is Gitty based. So we also have those included in our automation. And let's see if we can find that from here, from notifications. No. openQA. No. I can take a look from the Jenkins output what was submitted there, but I'm not sure if those requests are linked in every log file. No, I'm not sure. Let me look differently. Can we find the Leap 16.0 branch? No, not like that. Okay, and this is the Perl OBS project. Can we find openQA in here? We can find the pool. Can we find, so this is accepting request for the pool package. I assume this is corresponding to the factory commit. Yep, it is. And then there's a leap 16.0 branch. And we can find here that 3 weeks ago there was an update to the openQA package. Here we go. And we can see that there was a version of openQA in Leap 16.0, which is from September 23, and then by maintenance update, we brought it to the state of October 24. As we saw in before, this was also the baseline for the new maintenance update for Leap 15.6. Let's see if I can find a pull request to bring that up to date. Yep, there it is. So this is the pull request that will bring in the new changes on top of that. So you can see here that this is the delta compared to the Friday, October 24 state to November 11 by maintenance update to Leap 16.0 using the adopted new Gitty-based maintenance workflow. Okay, so much about the bringing all packages on to SLE plus package hub. Now, what about openQA and SLE modules? So basically, the end effect is the same, and we have most of these dependencies in SLE base, but there's still some packages like openQA itself, which is only built on top. However, what I can show you is if we go to registry SUSE and look for openQA, maybe lowercase. Yep. Then you see that there are also containers in there which are built within build SUSE based on a SLE base. And the only thing which is not in SLE directly are the openQA packages themselves. That would also be possible in a similar way by creating automatic maintenance updates, which we didn't follow because there is no official requirement anymore to provide that in a SLE base, and the new base would be SLFO. But still, there is a continuously updated container in two variants, which is the single instance container with or without OSADO tests included. And you can just use this container. You can see that the build time is 13th of November, so just from yesterday. So this is current from the Devil openQA project within IBS. Okay, and that provides an automatically updated version of the single instance container built on a pure SLE base with the package included and automatically imported so that we have an official SUSE built container. And the remaining epic would be openQA on SLFO. Well, basically, I've shown you in source OpenSUSE.org how it looks like based on a Gitty base. So more or less the result here is the same, and we could verify that we can build also and stand openQA on this base, either container or package base. So we are good there. So yep, that's it. What I wanted to show, and with that, let's come back to the Saga to wrap up. So what we did is we managed to improve openQA. We streamlined and simplified the installation and deployment process. We have openQA, including the full stack, available now sufficiently and recurringly updated in Tumbleweed, which we had for years. We have it on the last stable Leap 15.6 still. As long as that is in maintenance, we will also continue to provide updates there. We have it for Leap 16.0, so the new recently released stable version of Leap. That one also receives recurring updates. We have it in Package Hub, so also on a SLE base, one can run and deploy auth ordinst and the openQA stack, Worker and Web UI without needing any kind of additional development repositories. We extended the support for multiple implementation languages for test modules. And we also brought our development base to a more stable base with updated dependencies as well as code coverage and such. So over to you. Any questions, feedback, notes, or ideas that you could come up with? If not, then thank you for attending, and we can conclude here mentioning that we have one more workshop session in November, which is in 2 weeks from now. The topic is still open. So yesterday I asked SUSE QE Tools members on which topics they want to cover, maybe one of the recently concluded other tickets, because since the time of concluding that Saga for SUSE customers, already a lot of new work has been concluded. And after that, in December, we will do the final for this year, the final roadmap session. Maybe this time I will be able to come up with a proper recording, because in August we did manage to come up with a good recording, and the last time I messed up. So in October, also that one, I don't recommend to listen to it, because also the audio is distorted. After that, we will skip to the common public holiday in, just after Christmas, and we will start a fresh new year with topics like a retrospective, looking back. I also like to discuss with you our product vision for us as a team, as well as any ideas, plans, or wishes you might have for the next year. So thank you all for attending, and see you again. Goodbye.